Hi everyone, welcome back to Papa's Workshop. I'm going to show you exactly how to transform this old yellow ugly countertop and sink into a modern up-to-date granite looking countertop. And the best thing about it is I am not going to be removing the countertop to do this. The products that I'm going to be using are from Stone Coat Countertops, and I'm using the techniques that they have shown before, and I want to show you just how easy that it is, and the fact that you can do this in your home as well. Now, the people that are living here are going to be out of town for the next 3 days, so I'm going to transform this kitchen countertop in the next 3 days, and it needs a lot of work. This countertop is old and ugly, and it has a lot of chips and things in it that you can see right here that have to be repaired. That Formica is actually totally missing there on these spots, and if you look over on this corner, you can see where this corner has been chipped away and it is in bad state of repair. Plus, I'm going to make this ugly seam disappear. The first step we need to do is take some TSP, which is trisodium phosphate, and we need to completely clean the countertop. Now, it has on the back under the instructions exactly how to mix this. It says 1/4 cup per 2 gallons of water. Well, if you calculate that out, I can mix about 1 ounce to about 20 ounces of water and get virtually the same ratio. It's actually a little bit stronger, but that's okay. So I mix that up into a spray bottle, and I'm going to clean all of the grime and dirt and grease off of these countertops that have been accumulating for the last who knows how many years. Now, you cannot skip this step, because if you do not clean all the grease and grime off of these countertops, the primer is not going to stick very well, and that's going to be the foundation of this entire project. So take your time and clean all the old paint, caulking, grease, anything that's on this countertop. You want to make sure that it's completely clean. The next step is to sand everything on this countertop. Now, I'm using a 60 grit sandpaper. In addition to sanding the entire countertop, I'm also sanding this seam. I want this seam completely smooth and get rid of the ridge that's been on there forever. That has been very problematic and just looked horrible. Well, that is going to disappear today. After sanding the entire countertop and sanding this seam, you can see now where it's completely smooth. So this is a very, very important step in preparation to be able to Bondo this seam. I also looked around the entire countertop for any places where the laminate has delaminated, because if that has happened, that would have to be repaired. This area on the corner will easily be able to be Bondoed and smoothed out. The good thing is nothing has delaminated in looking at this whole entire countertop. So at this point, with all of the sanding done, with this edge completely now smooth, it's time to clean the countertops again. This time we want to be able to remove all of the dust and debris created by the sanding and get ready to do the Bondo. The 91% alcohol is very effective because it evaporates very quickly and picks up all the residue. After mixing up and applying the Bondo to all the damaged area, and of course this seam, it was time to be able to sand one more time. Now this time I went ahead and put about 150 grit to 200 grit sandpaper on to be able to sand off this Bondo, and that left a perfectly smooth surface. Now don't forget, clean everything again with the alcohol before applying the primer. This is the primer that I chose to use, and it's very easy to apply. I just used a small roller to be able to roll out the countertop, and the end result looks quite nice. It looks a lot better than the yellow, and we haven't even started the rest of the process. But you want a good, smooth, even coat. In some cases it may take 2 coats, but you want a good, even coat of the primer applied, and you want it thoroughly dry before moving to the next step. This literally was the end of day 1. On day 2, we're using these colors. Now this is a semi-gloss enamel water-based paint by the Behr Company, and there's 4 different colors that we're using. And I must say, a little bit goes a long way. You're not going to use all of this paint. You're going to have some left over. The colors that I chose to use are as follows. The first one, the lightest color, is white metal, followed by dolphin gray. This is legendary gray, and the fourth color is the asphalt gray. Now you can choose any color you wish. The roller that I'm going to be using is a faux finish sponge roller, and I would suggest getting more than one roller to be able to do this. This roller has quite a bit of texture in it, and that's what you're looking for. And it takes very, very little pressure to be able to put the color down. One of the tips that I want to give to you to be able to protect the tray is just take a trash bag and slip the paint tray inside of that trash bag. And then that way, when you put the paint in it, you can do everything that you need to do. And then once finished, cleanup becomes very easy. Just slip the tray out, you turn your trash bag wrong side out, and you can discard it, and you still have a clean paint tray. I'm starting with the lightest color, the white metal. And again, it does not take a lot of paint. So I'm just going to open the can and pour a small amount of the paint into this paint tray. And remember, it takes literally very little paint. Right there, that is plenty of paint, and I will actually have some left over that I'm going to be able to put back into this can. You notice I'm using very, very light pressure. The less pressure that you have, the better that it is, and the more texture that you're going to be able to get. Now you notice, in looking at that, you can see several spots where the roller was rolling and there was some heavy spots. Don't worry about that, that will be okay, because you'll be able to come back with the additional colors and be able to, in essence, make that disappear. But you can see by rolling over it a second time that they don't go away. Don't force it, just let it be. Again, light pressure is the key to this whole entire process. And what you're going to find out, little errors like that are not going to be errors at all. They're going to add actual character as you add the different colors to it and make it look even more like the natural granite. Because it will create different veins, it'll create different spots, just like the natural granite does. I want to give you a close-up now of the first coat. Now this is the white metal over the primer, and you can see how there's some light areas, dark areas, and that is what you're looking for. It's beginning to look just a little bit like the natural granite would look, even with just the one color. We'll let this dry for about an hour and start with the next coat. The next color that I'm adding is the dolphin gray, which is just a little bit darker. Now you can see just how light that I'm rolling this. This is the weight of the roller is all that is taking place here, and it's putting down very little paint. And then we can roll the edge. You don't need much paint on the edges. Just a little bit is all you need. The one thing you really want to avoid is pushing down on the roller, because if it stops putting paint on the counter and you push down on the roller, you will get too much paint. I also use a new roller. I want to make sure that that roller is absolutely dry, and having done the first coat and washed out the first roller, well, it's still wet, so this is a brand new roller. The beauty of this system is you can see exactly what the finish is going to look like before you go any further. And quite frankly, after this second coat, we almost stopped. My wife and I looked at it and said, this is pretty awesome. We could leave it alone right there and be totally happy with it. But not to be deterred, we were going to move on to the additional colors. Now I did take just a little small piece of foam to be able to stencil in a little bit of extra color onto the backsplash. And now you can see what that second coat looks like. It added a lot of depth, and it's really looking good. Like I said, we almost stopped at this point and did not go any further. Well, we did continue on, and we added the legendary gray, and we came back and added the asphalt to be able to finish all four colors. Now at that point, you can see exactly what it looks like. And this, in many respects, looks exactly like granite. But for me, this was too dark. And this is one of the beautiful things about this process. At this point, I can come back and add a little bit of the white metal again and add a little bit of the dolphin gray to be able to tone it down just a little bit. And I think the results came out just absolutely gorgeous because you can layer these different colors until you get the exact look that you are looking for, and then you can proceed to the next step. But you tell me in the comment section if you like it to be real dark or if you like it where it was toned down just a little bit and had a lighter color. And this is one example here on the backsplash. I definitely wanted to tone it down just a little bit with a touch of the white metal. But I really love how this countertop is coming out. I actually like a lot of the black that's in there, but I do think it's too dark. So at this point, we added a little bit of white metal and came back and just touched up different areas that we needed to, in my opinion, make just a little bit better. Also, there was a few roller marks in there that we didn't like, and by adding the different colors on top of the other colors, it all blended in perfectly. So you can see a big difference from this shot versus the other one, because this is where we had the white metal added back in, and now it's really coming to life. All of those different roller marks that you saw earlier are all gone, and to me, this really looks like granite. At this point, we have the 4 base colors, plus 2 more colors where we came back with the light, so it's a total of 6 different colors all layered together. And being very happy with the results of this, it's time to prepare the top coat and get the clear epoxy put on. To do that, we need to mask everything off. This sheeting right here is 3 feet by 50 feet long. This works perfect to be able to put it on the cabinets and be able to completely wrap the cabinets in so that if any epoxy drips, it's not going to get on the cabinet itself. It's the perfect length to go all the way down to the floor. And the nice thing about this, when you tape it onto the top of the cabinet, then all you need to be able to do is come back and unfold this, and the rest of it will drop right down where it needs to be onto the floor. Now, as far as doing the floor itself, that needs to be protected also. I promise you, you are going to drop epoxy onto the floor, whether you think you're careful or not, it's going to happen. Now, I chose to use the clear plastic because that's what I had on hand. This may or may not be the best option because it can be slippery. I also tucked this plastic in underneath and taped it to the cabinet. The next step is we need to create a little bit of barrier so we can control the flow of the epoxy. The first step we need to do is put up a little dam around the sink opening, and I also put a piece of cardboard in so that if any epoxy rolls off of the edge of this sink opening, it's going to drip onto the cardboard. So don't forget this step. Please put the dam up and put in the barrier made out of cardboard or some other type of material to catch the overflow, because after about roughly 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to remove this tape barrier and that epoxy will flow over the edge. Well, when it flows over the edge, you want to be able to have it be caught by the cardboard and not the base of the cabinet. So this is an important step to be able to do. You can see in the distance the cardboard's in place. I also have the barrier around where the sharp edges are, and the part with the rolled edges of the countertop, the tape wasn't necessary. Okay, it's time to mix the epoxy. To be able to mix the epoxy, you need to be able to calculate how much you actually need. And for the stone coat countertops, you need 3 ounces of the epoxy per foot, 1 square foot of the counter space. Now the counters that I have, including the backsplash, was about 36 square feet. So it's very easy to calculate on 3 ounces per the square foot of the cabinet space to be able to get exactly how much of the epoxy that we needed. At this point, I mixed in the A and the B. I put in the A first, and then I put in part B. The part B is the hardener. Now granted, this was a very tight area to be able to work in, and I really didn't have a good working place. So guess what? The stove became my workplace. And yes, I did cover it up also, because I promise you epoxy will drip out onto that plastic and you don't want it on the stove. As far as mixing, once you add part A and B, you need to mix it for a good 2 minutes. Now, one of the things that's very, very important to do when you're working with epoxy, pretty much have backups for everything. And to give you an example, my battery went dead. The good thing about it is I had the spare battery with me. So always plan ahead for the unexpected, because I promise you it will happen. You want to mix this epoxy for a good 2 minutes. And after you mix it for 2 minutes, one of the things that I like to do is take the spatula and scrape the edges really, really well. You want to be able to get all of that epoxy into the mix. You don't want that left on the side. So after I have the sides scraped really, really good, I'll set my spatula aside and then I'll mix it again for an additional minute, just to make sure that it's totally mixed up. Then comes the fun part. It's time to be able to pour the epoxy onto the countertop. At this point, you can just start out by pouring a nice stream of the epoxy down through the center, and you can pour it in various places to be able to get pretty much the coverage that you want. There's no right or wrong way to be able to do this. And remember, you have plenty of working time. You have about 45 minutes of working time. The trowel that I'm using is an 1/8 inch notch trowel, and you just barely scrape the surface. Just literally the weight of the trowel itself is the only thing that I'm using to be able to spread this epoxy. And at this point, I'm keeping it away from the edge, especially that rolled edge, because I don't want that epoxy just to roll over and hit the floor. So I'm going to take a few minutes and spread this epoxy evenly all over the entire surface and make sure that I have complete coverage. Now this will self-level, and this is a very easy product to be able to work with. The next step in the process is to use a paintbrush, and I like to use a new paintbrush that I can get all of the little bristles out, and it's a good quality brush. And I just chop the surface. This helps to distribute the epoxy, helps to make it where it'll self-level easier, and it will make it where it has better adhesion. So I'll go through the process and do the entire surface of the countertop using this method. Of course, if there's any trowel marks that were left when you poured out the epoxy and spread it along the surface, using this method will help get rid of all of those trowel lines as well. You will have some bubbles that will be scattered throughout the epoxy, and the easiest way to be able to get those out is with the torch. Now, you can use the heat gun, but quite frankly, I like to be able to use this torch. It works extremely well, and it's very efficient to be able to remove this. And you will need to do this process at least 3 times to be able to remove all the bubbles. Now, as this begins to self-level and cure, after about an hour, you will need to remove the tape that you have around the edge of the countertop so that that epoxy will be able to flow very slowly over the edge and catch and cover all of the edges. Well, it's been just about an hour, and you can see just how gorgeous this looks. I've removed the tape from the edges and helped get the epoxy to flow over the edges, including this round over on the front, and it is just looking absolutely gorgeous. The next step, of course, is to move over to that kitchen sink area and remove the tape from there. Leave that cardboard in place. Now, at this point, you could consider this finished. But what I want to be able to do is take it one step further and add the ultimate top coat. So the next day we come back and I'm going to sand this countertop with 220 grit sandpaper. Now that's going to create a mechanical bond to be able to put the ultimate top coat on. Now this will create an extremely durable and tough finish that will take a lot of abuse, and it will protect this countertop for years to come. Now the nice thing about it is, should something actually happen where it gets damaged, you can come back and sand again and put another top coat on maybe several years down the road. Hopefully that won't happen, but it is possible and it easily can be done. After all the sanding is done, it's back to cleaning. I used a 91% alcohol for this and a paper towel. You want to make sure that you get all of that residue off that was left from the sanding. You want this surface completely clean and completely dry. I usually go over it at least twice for this process. The rollers that I use is a 1/4-inch nap. It's a 6-inch roller, and you have to prepare them. You've got to defuzz them. So I stretched out a piece of the painter's tape, attach it to one end of anything. In this case, I use the stove handle, and then I roll the roller all along that tape. I want to be able to catch the edges, the ends, the entire roller, and make sure that I completely defuzz the rollers. I have one roller that's been defuzzed, that's going to be for the wet, and then I have two that will be for the dry. And it's important to have basically a 2-to-1 on your rollers. As far as the mix, this is a 2-to-1 mix, part A to part B. Now I have 36 square feet, so basically I need a total of about 10 ounces. And with 10 ounces, what I'm going to do is mix 6 ounces of part A, 3 ounces of part B, and I have 1 ounce cup for the water to be able to mix in. Now the working time on this is about 15 minutes, so you don't have a lot of time. But I've got this cup to be able to measure my 3 ounce and 6 ounce, and this cup will be for my 1 ounce of water. Once I add part B to my A, you're on the clock. You have 15 minutes to be able to work and get this done. When I take part A and shake it up real good, because this product does settle, and you need to get all the stuff from the bottom back mixed in all the way. So we're going to use this roller to put it on liberally and just do a W type format, get it all spread out evenly, and then we'll come back with the dry roller and be able to roll it out. And you want very light pressure. And basically when these rollers are made, most of the pressure is going to be on this side. So this will be the light side, and that will help feather the product out. So you're just going to roll it, come back, and we'll move to the next section and back. We'll overlap about 50%. And then we'll come and do the edges, and that will take care of it. If this gets too wet, then we'll switch it out and we'll have our backup. Preparation is the key to this. You must be organized and prepared. So at this point, I think we have everything ready. I'm taking part A, pouring it into my cup, and again, I need 6 ounces for this particular job. I want this as accurate as I possibly can. So to get that last little bit, I'm setting the cup on the counter and pouring it up to that 6 ounce line. Then I can dump this into my large cup, and I want to scrape the sides and get every bit of this product out of this cup that I possibly can. Don't want to leave anything behind. Now it's time to pour part B. And remember, I need 3 ounces of this. And again, I want this to be as accurate that I possibly can. So I'm holding the cup, pouring out 3 ounces to get it measured exactly even. And I look at it, I want to verify, and I'm happy with it. I'll add a little bit more in just to get to that 3 ounce point. Then I'll set that aside. Okay, we're pouring part B into part A, scraping the container real well, and we're on the clock. We have 15 minutes. The first thing that I want to be able to do, of course, is to get that cup completely cleaned out, and then we'll stir this for about a minute, minute and a half. I want to add in my 1 ounce of water, and basically you want to be able to add water to be able to thin this a little bit, but you do not want to add more than 2% per volume. So in this case, 1 ounce of water works out real well. And now at this point, it's ready to be able to dump into the paint tray. Again, I want to scrape out the container just as thoroughly as I possibly can to get every bit of this product into the paint tray. Now I actually do have a timer set that's counting down my 15 minutes. Now you do want to saturate the roller really well, and then roll this out in a W-type fashion and be able to get as much product onto the surface as you can. Now I like to work with about a 4 foot by 4 foot area to be able to get good coverage to begin with. Once I have that good coverage, then I want to roll out the first even coat with the roller. And I'm going to get the edges at the same time. From there, it's time to grab the dry roller, and we'll roll everything out very smooth as I had showed earlier in the demonstration. The bad news is the camera died. We didn't catch that footage. But here's a look at the finished kitchen countertop. So much nicer than that yellow countertop with that yellow sink. This, I believe, turned out absolutely gorgeous. This makes such a big difference in the look of the kitchen as well as the whole house. It matches the kitchen cabinets perfectly. I love the color, and I love the way that this complements the walls and the cabinets. So just to recap, here is the before picture of what it looked like before we began this process with this ugly yellow countertop and sink. And then by contrast, let's look at the finished cabinets and countertops one more time. This is such a wonderful upgrade, and it really modernized the entire kitchen. I think this turned out absolutely fantastic. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and tell me, is this worth it, and would you consider doing this in your home? Well, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video on whatever project that I'm working on. So for now, bye-bye.